What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Professional Hippies. We really need to get like a sound for that, Dylan.
We should get something.
Something right there. Anyway, if you are new to our podcast, thanks for stopping by. We're the Professional Hippies. We like to bridge the gap between professionalism, whatever that means for you, and hippie woo-woo, maybe not so woo, somewhere in the middle of that. Today we're joined by our epic friends, Ta and Kole. I love that in the description. And to do them service, I'm going to do a little bit of a bio here, because I think when a proper introduction is necessary, why not honor it? So if you don't know their work yet, my hope is that after this podcast, you will become intimate with it. They host the Psychedelic Coach podcast. It's something that I've become a part of in their ecosystem recently, hence why they're here today for you guys. The co-creators of the Condor Approach, a psychedelic-informed certification for therapists, physicians, life coaches, and health experts, is thebomb.com. Got to say that. So in addition to their next level program, they're committed to building business structures that are contribution-driven and committed to reciprocity for indigenous communities. That is a lot right there. I'm glad I got to say that correctly. But this dynamic duo is up to some great work, and we're going to dig into it right here. No doubt you're going to love this, and stick around to the end. I think you guys are probably going to want to plug some promos and maybe some juicy incentives. I'm no expert, but if I'm going to forecast anything, I would say maybe, might, kind of. How's it going, guys? How you going?
Definitely.
So good. So as you were talking, I was like, if you're professional and hippie, then aren't you just like pro-woo at this point? I think that might be the next iteration of the podcast, is you're actually pro-woo. I like it.
As attention spans get shorter and shorter, we will eliminate more and more syllables.
Totes.
I'm sure our agent will finally just be like, we got to cut it off. It's not the professional hippies. It's professional hippies.
Yes. Pro-hip.
Prohibitation.
Prohibitation, man. So thanks for joining us today, guys. I mean, I really am stoked. I think cohabited what?
The prohabitat.
Just keep going.
Hey, man, we can be pro whatever you want to be.
All right.
What up?
Do it.
Feel free to edit anything as necessary.
It's all going up.
Glenn's with us. Yeah, I mean, Glenn's on it, man, but I don't think any of that's edit worthy. Not yet. We'll get back into before we're recording. Some of that, I think, is what we would bring in to edit out. But yeah, guys. So I know that right now is something that I wanted to bring you guys on was for the Costa Rica retreat. We typically like to have the flow of our podcast be more of like a fireside chat, but after seeing a barrage of emails from Kole in the recent days, which coming off of the calls, so the integration calls and strategy calls we get to do, I'm curious about the retreat and just kind of starting there, because you guys used to do more intimate settings with your clients, right? Like intimate rather. And now it's more of like retreat focused. It's kind of growing into a life of its own. So you could give an introduction to the work you do, but I did want to kind of frame it around the retreat coming up and kind of working backwards from there, like how you guys got to this point where you're hosting retreats. So kind of take that in whatever direction you want, but I have a lot of curiosity around that.
Yeah, intimate is relative. For us, we've always kept things at a pretty, I would say 12 people or less has usually been our goal with retreats, events, where there's still enough to get to know people, but it's not only one-to-one. We've done a lot of one-to-one work. We've done a lot of small group work, but for quite a while, retreats were all we were doing, and maybe one-to-one clients from time to time. And so the retreat coming up for New Year's, the focus that changed in the last 14 years, most people are familiar of hearing psychedelics as plant medicine. The term plant medicine, you do ceremonies in a plant medicine retreat. And so when we first entered the work, we were working with plant medicine. Through different teachers and elders down in Peru, it was reframed from us, from one of our elders in particular, one of our teachers, who said, you sit with medicine when you're sick. And so there's a healing point of a journey where it shifts from medicine into you become a mentee not a patient. And so the different power plants and master mycelium become your teachers, not your doctors. And so that shift in language for us is what started to frame events more like Costa Rica for New Year's, is that it's not about going back to heal. It's about looking on the horizon, taking the condor's bird's eye view to say, what do I need to know, do, be, or understand with what I am feeling in my heart I am destined to do that I can't currently see because of my current beliefs or my current beliefs about myself and what's possible. And so in those types of retreats, we're actually looking to call in our ancestors of the past, ancestors of the future, and speak to the body in the moment of now to learn our instinctual intelligence, so that as we share our messages, we're doing it from a molecular level. Because your ancestors for us speak through your cells, through your DNA. That's why some people have diseases that express and others don't, even if they have the same gene. So for us, it's almost exploring epigenetics through spirituality of how do I access my lineages in the future to kind of pull in what's coming to get clarity on how I'm going to get there. And so, yes, things from the past could come up, but in this type of retreat, they only come up because they're in the way of what you need to know, do, be, or understand. Versus, I need to go heal my inner child. It is different work we're doing now. When we entered the work, it was healing work. Now that we've laid the foundation, we already know that healing happens as a result of living from a place of contribution and reciprocity. And so we do have these, I would put it more of a higher investment retreats, which not only supports a lot more families as a result, but also allows us to create a lot of free offers that we assimilate out into communities that don't have access to shaman facilitators or teachers. And so it's more that where we are now is an evolution of what healing was when we got into the space. And now we're here to empower the evolution of healing to say, you know what, for a lot of us, you've healed enough and it's time to get to work. You will keep healing. This path is never going to stop, but you've done enough. There's people that need help out there. And so getting you out of your way, helping people to tap into an expansive experience of their imagination, but how to toggle it. So we're actually going to be teaching a much higher skill level of how to be in a psychedelic experience. We're working with Wachuma over this New Year's retreat, but how to keep one foot in the conscious world and one foot where it's almost like you're fly fishing out into the conscious, expansive spiritual spaces, bringing back the catch. How does this apply to my life? How do I embody this in the moment? And then how do I move from here? And so it's integrating in real time, integrating in spirituality at the same time, which is why for us, Wachuma is the perfect teacher for that. Yeah.
I mean, just to take a moment of reverence for what is the download of source from Kole. Like that's, and by the way, for everyone that's going to listen to this podcast, like one of the things I love about you, Kole, to reflect this back to you is I don't know, it's almost like, Todd, when you're freestyling, I'm watching the same thing happen with Kole and your expression. It's like this stuff is so ingrained in the both of you. That's why I'm so grateful that you guys wanted to come on and share this with our community. It's like, this isn't, it's practiced, but it's not rehearsed, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, man, you guys got some depth and some presence and some knowledge. And I love what you guys bring to the table, especially when you're saying healing. It doesn't always have to be about the medicine part, right? Like, I think that's something that gets lost with the plant medicines a lot. I mean, when you said that just like a tuning fork resonated with me. Because when we talk about this on the podcast, the difference between recreation, like recreationally using a substance, and medicinally using a substance, power plant, et cetera. So,
well, and this is the key time that I'm seeing in humanity in general, and thank you for that. It only took my last, everything we're doing now came from ceremonies where we were called to do the beckoning of whatever. We don't know if it's aliens, we don't know if it's God, we don't know what it is, but we recognize that when we say something, then we hear it reflected in different ways, in different languages, in different verbiages, and it's time. And so we had to get over ourselves and our fear of sharing things, because it was like, how about you get over yourself, because there's people that are looking to connect, And we are one of the connectors. We are conduits for what is transpiring now in collaboration. Not something we are doing, but something we are called to in order for this collaboration of change to happen.
You know, optimization is what you can move into after you do the foundational remedying of bringing yourself into wholeness. And like a lot of the foundational work that people do in psychedelics is kind of stirring the pot, finding what's in the shadow and what's kind of splintered off and bringing it together to make wholeness. And healing for me is a journey of becoming whole. Integration is a journey of becoming whole. And once someone is in a space of wholeness, there's other things that they can become whole with, right? And so if I'm not whole with my neighborhood or my family in integrating these things, it's going to be challenging for me to be whole in a community, right? And so once I become integrated in one space, I optimize that by integrating into another space, and then I integrate into another space. And so there's a habit form that happens in all of this stuff. And when we go into space, human beings like to do things that are enhanced. And when you're optimized, you're enhanced on autopilot, right? So you make a habit out of an enhancement. And that's what we're doing with this retreat. We're taking people out and we're showing them how to take how they've been enhanced and actually make an optimization by making a habit out of that enhancement of wholeness. And so to bring in that information and really, really embed it into the self, take it and make it into a habit form, use it for your business, use it for your family life, use it for whatever. This is optimization, is when you take that and you make it a habit form. And so in that space, when you have tools, you're kind of clumsy with them at first. And when you use them over and over again, you become refined. It's just like when Kole's having these downloads and things that move through her, things probably were really clunky at first, and now they're really smooth because she has created this optimal space of bringing information in through her organism and then transmitting it to other people. And so it's the same thing when I freestyle. It's the same thing when I'm talking. It's a movement through this stuff. And as you get into the space, you become more optimized by using that enhancement over and over again until it becomes a habit and it becomes refined. So
something that few people talk about that was a game changer for me being able to allow that process actually was journeying and speaking to my own body, every molecule, every atom in my system, to say, what do you need me to do to optimize how the radio signal tower works? Because inflammation for me is part of what creates noise in this system. Inflammation makes it harder for me to hear. And so it's not only whether foods are good or bad or whatever, it's working in ceremonial capacity to know my body so well that I can hold a food and my body will go, and I will not eat it. Doesn't matter if it's healthy, not healthy. It's the same reason of why I could smoke a cigarette and have a fantastic time being present with no detriment to my body. Now, that's not something that happens often because of the cost that it's checking in with my body, right? And when I started to remove good or bad and started to truly get intimate with my body in ceremonial and journey spaces to say, what do you need? What are the signs that you're not in a place to process something? Because I may be consuming too much mind things, even from an entrepreneurial, marketing, business perspective, that I'm not listening to my body. So I had to learn my body's cues, which is how the Condor Approach, our journaling system, the workbook, was made. And that's something that's free to anybody, anytime. That the reason that became what it is and why body mapping and working with Wachuma specifically in this way, you learn the intelligence of your entire body that is a rearticulation of something from this planet since the beginning of time. And so for us on a molecular genetic level, the cells, your blood, how you've evolved comes from ancient tradition. But we don't pause to actually speak to the intelligence that is in evolution. And then if I can feel back that way, I start to speak forward this way, my future body, my future understanding, my future self. People say higher, whatever, if that's what you want to call it. For me, it's my infinite self that already knows. My infinite self that knows if something's not working, it's not time, it's not right for me, or it's not the way. That level you learn through your body, not your mind. Your mind is the Spock of the Star Trek Enterprise. Know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely Captain Kirk, where I'm like, we should go right through, right? And he's like, this is a terrible idea. The statistics are you're for sure going to die. And I'm like, I mean, I like those odds, though. There is a chance it's going to be awesome. That's the intelligence of the body, is when you go, no, I think this is going to work, and you get that old shoulder pain that's tapping you on the shoulder like, I don't know. And so for me, the only way I could learn that was with my master teachers of other realms, dimensions, ancestors, whatever you want to call it, to say when something is in alignment, what does that feel like? So that when I deliver messages and it's virtual, that I can look in the camera or whoever is hearing my voice. I have sat with Wachuma and taught my body, what does it feel like to be in my heart? What does it feel like to have conviction when I'm speaking my truth? That I taught my body, because my body had been conditioned differently than what was natural. And so this is, with this retreat, it was that moment people started to go, I want to learn that. That's like some Jedi shit. I want that thing, right? I want to know my body so well that no one can make me waver on what I decide, because I know. I know here, I know in my gut, I know in my body, and my mind's just going to help me get there. So this is my absolute favorite conversation to have. So thank you for bringing up the retreat, because it's, for me, this is the next evolution necessary for people that have done enough healing work to start helping others.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of starting points or launching points I think we could have gone with, but that for me was just a juicy thread that I wanted to pull at, and I'm glad we ended up here, because there's a spider web of other things I'm curious about. I mean, specifically, like when you're speaking into Dylan, you stop me anytime you want to butt in too, by the way, buddy. But when you're talking about like speaking to the molecules, I think that's something that, consciously or not, everyone can resonate with. Like you feel a tug, whether it's going to eat a hot dog or have a cigarette. But like the cigarette example, I really resonate with, because it is seldom, few and far between when I want a cigarette. But when I do and I get one, that like that, when you're scratching that itch, buddy, oh man, there's nothing like it. And I think,
even the idea it's scratching an itch, though, because even that, if you go into where that terminology come from, it is loaded down with shame. Because for me, tobacco is a master plant. And when I was smoking on a daily basis for 16 years, more or less, I had to change my relationship, and that was clear. And I said, okay, if this substance, if this plant, this power plant was a person, what would our relationship be like? And so I literally sat and wrote out what the relationship, with all the characteristics, and only spending 5 minutes and not consciously being present and kind of using this master teacher, how functional would our relationship be? And it was that moment that I recognized I didn't want any relationship in my life to function that way, that I only come to you when I need you. We're not sharing. We are not collaborating. We are not interrelating, interdependent. And so I, at that moment, went and I actually researched and bought live tobacco plants, because it was clear that smoking was not, I had fitness goals and desires for my body, that this was now in the way. So it was never taken out because it was bad, wrong, or broken. It was in the way of things I wanted. And so I had to have enough desire and enough passion for something else for it to take precedence and priority over something I loved. And so I bought live tobacco plants, and every time I wanted to smoke, I'd go sit with the plants and we would breathe together. And for that part of my life, it was, in the past, we were both dying. It was dried out, and it had passed in that iteration. And at that point in my life, I was dying. And so this shift in the relationship was, let's live together and thrive together and feed each other. Oxygen, right? This life force. And that changed the relationship forever after that. And so my commitment to tobacco, master tobacco as a plant, was that I would become so present that there would be no distractions. I would put my phone away. It would be complete presence and gratitude and true appreciation for all of the years that it truly saved my life. Was the only tool I had to get through some really tough times. And in that transmutation of shame and actually going into a gratitude space, completely changed many relationships in my life. When I just started to look at whether it was the food I was eating, what I was drinking, the relationships I was in, if that was a person, how functional would that relationship be? Most people are using drugs or alcohol. Most people are using smoking. They're using people for connection or love. So it's no wonder that it's not functional.
What would you say on the back of using? What's the alternative?
Be with, sit with, learn from.
Participate in.
Mm-hmm. And so anytime, just by changing that, when I said I don't use Wachuma, I sit with Wachuma, I commune, I learn from, almost any other term, I get present. Or sit with versus use is just like the simplest. But for me, it's being with. Just like I, sit with my friends, I'm present with my friends. It's, for some people, it's semantics. For me, the words matter. And those words mattered to me.
Is that like when you're saying use too, when you were referring back earlier to someone that has now passed the healing point, right? And so would you I'm trying to get into the mindset of where you're at. Using would be someone using to get to that healing. They're using it to heal themselves, using it to overcome whatever they need to. And then once they surpass that, now they're integrated with it and working together. I'm trying to get in the mindset. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of the same reference?
It would be similar. I would say then it would be relative to the person and what those words mean to them. So for me, when I used things, it was mindless. When I'm with something, I'm mindful. So if I use someone to go out on a date to buy me dinner, then it's not about the person, it's about what I want. So there's no reciprocity there, really. Now, if I say that I would love to, go with someone to dinner, I might still be getting the dinner, but I am also interested in the person part of the dinner, not just having my stomach full. And so for me, it's the same with substances. Many people use mushrooms to have a good time with their friends. It's not them communing with the spirit of the mushroom. It is different. Now, that doesn't make it bad or anything either. It's relative to what are you looking for. I did notice for myself when there wasn't reverence, when there wasn't consideration, and there wasn't reciprocity and gratitude to the spirit of the mushrooms or Wachuma or ayahuasca or whatever, that I did not get the same benefit in my daily life. So it was like short-term gain of maybe the fun with my friends. And it doesn't mean like bowing your head and folding your arms all night, but it's presence. It's awareness. And the more awareness I had, the more I started to recognize that Wachuma or mushrooms or whatever came to me on a daily basis through people or lessons, because they're not using me. We are interconnected now, and so we are allies to each other, both in the space and out. And so it's more around, if I'm using something, what does that mean to me? If I am celebrating something, what does that mean to me? And then am I making it or am I making it and? Can I connect with my friends and make sure that we bring reciprocity and love and gratitude to the teachers, to the people that brought it into our life? That's the difference for me.
So when you're working with people, then you were talking about earlier too, going back to you were saying, they've passed the healing stage. It almost sounds like you start working with people that almost feel a little lost. They've passed the healing stage. They've done it enough times to understand what's going on, and they're like, well, I can either just keep doing this with my friends, or let's take this to a next level to help my friends, or just help other people out there to share it more. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking at the next summit, right? We just got to the peak of one mountain of healing, and it's like, okay, well, what's next? Because once you get to a certain point of healing, you start to wonder, how do I now serve others? Now that I've fortified myself. And so it could feel like lost, certainly, And sometimes it's merely people have shifted into curiosity of what else is there because it doesn't suck so bad. When you're in a really hard place of suck and pain and anxiety, depression, PTSD, you can't consider other people. You can pretend for a little while and hide your suffering by putting yourself in service to someone else, but it doesn't buy you much time before your body shuts down and forces you to care for yourself. So you can certainly be in a healing process and feel lost. You can certainly be healed enough and feel lost. And so I think the question to the self is, what do you want? What do you want?
We see we've had several people come on, other coaches that have come on in this space, but the coaching that they were kind of handling is newcomers to the system and working with the plants or whatever it might be. And it sounds like your clientele are kind of definitely more experienced. Of course, there's a lot more, I would say, that are new into to coming into the plant world. Do you find a lot of people that are looking for this, like they're ready to take that next shift?
100%. Not everyone's experienced, but I would say everyone has a grand amount of experience in exploring themselves. It may not have been with power plants or mushrooms, but it might have been through Tony Robbins or Landmark, or they've got some ability to self-regulate, to self-reflect. They've had to learn some level of radical self-responsibility, self-facilitation. Those are the people that are most attracted to what we do now because they know how to hold space for themselves. And that is not a little bit of work. Facing yourself honestly is the hardest part.
Healing is a really interesting dynamic that's been coming up a lot in the conversations I've been having on podcasts, the conversations I've been having with people. And when a person, the healing never stops. Healing is an ongoing process. And when we remove the idea of separation, that you are a separate person, I am a separate person, when we look at our bodies, in order for our bodies to heal, the cells themselves individually have to heal. And then once the cell is healed, the organ can heal. And once the organ can heal, the whole organism can heal. And so it's the same thing with people. Once a person starts to be healed in the individual self, they can support the family structure, they can support their partners, they can support the people around them, and then there's a healing that's larger, that's different. And so it's just moving from one stage of healing to the next stage of healing. And this is where we're looking to support people in supporting those people who have done the foundational individual cellular work, who are looking to support people in healing the community, in healing the family unit, in healing the business, in healing the financial institutional structures of our world, of healing the countries, of healing humanity. And so these things move in stages. And if we're all at the base level, then who's helping the people who have helped the healers, who are the healers, right, who've supported, who have healed and gotten to these places? How do you get to the next space? And this is where we have these different echelons. And it doesn't make people higher or better. This is a different evolutionary space. And in order for the people who are at the base level to be assisted into the next space, we have to have people in the next space who can actually assist them in that space. And so there's a gap. And so we're looking to fill that gap. And that gap is the next step. And that's the moving from one healing stage to the next healing stage to the next healing stage. It's evolution. This is how we evolve. This is how we become resilient. This is how we grow as human beings.
Yeah, exactly what Todd's saying. It's more the people who know that there isn't someone in their community, or they already are that person in their community. They're actually seeing that there is a need, and they're kind of looking around going, well, who's going to do something about this? And we're the ones standing behind them going, You are the one for your community. You're the one that speaks the language. And so what we offer is not only his 30 years as a nurse, not only all the years we've been working in this space, and then my work in addiction and everything that we've both been through, we're interested in handing people frameworks so that, one, they can even prove if their concepts work for them. We want to have a skeleton for if one person's into meditation and yoga and another person's into ice baths and, going and doing those warrior runs. Those are spiritually impactful for someone. And by helping people understand how psychedelics influence your coaching, how psychedelics can inhibit or help someone's process. We're teaching people to help look at their community and fulfill a need. And because we're giving them very clear systems and frameworks, they get to create their own much faster to fulfill the need of their community. Because right now, everyone's waiting for top-down support. They're waiting for the government structure to change. They're waiting for funding or grants or whatever. We're here to say we're not waiting for permission. Now, we're not condoning illegal or illicit use of any substances. You may be someone that holds space for someone. They have their own substance. It's not illegal. If you are just helping someone, you sit there and make sure they're safe. You do need to know your boundaries. You do need to know the laws where you live. You do need to understand an intake process so that you could know how to support someone, or if it's someone you would be able to support. For us, it's helping people get clear in what they do know, have them nail that down and have accountability to that, and then take action. We don't want someone to come learn from us and then go home and try to assimilate the information. We want them to come work with us, and by the time they leave, they're taking action because they're clear in how they can right now, trusting they're going to keep learning just like they're going to keep healing. At first, when you're healing, it's internal. Then you start to heal as a reflection through other people. When they trigger you, you get to be with that. You get to do that work within you. And as you coach other people and see them flourish, that heals you because you see the benefit of your energy, and all the work you've done on you is now supporting someone else. So this is that handing it off from place to place. And that's why from a sustainability reciprocity, we say figure out your contribution first. How much do you want to give? How much do you want to make? How can you get there? If someone is, living in an area like Philly, they can't charge the same as someone here in Austin, Texas for their services. So we have to talk about different business models that work for the people they want to serve. Now, because it triggers everybody's stuff, it triggers their money stuff, their family stuff, community wounds, we coach through that. But all the ways that we do it, we learned from our master teachers in plant, animal, fungi form, and we get to practice that every single day. A dear friend of mine who's one of the biggest life coaches as far as their impact and who they are said to me, I find it interesting that you and Ta are my friends that work in psychedelics, and you do less psychedelics than any of my other friends. And it's because for us, it's about practicing the lessons and the work. We certainly had times we journeyed every month when we were learning, when we were mentees, when we were supporting groups. And that was part of our healing, to hold space for someone else because it's not about me anymore. I did that for me so that I could hold this for someone else. And so with where we are now, I got a very clear message in Peru last year, not to go in the realms. I have work to do out here. And I don't know how many people are doing the work out here. They're going back and journeying again because they get the big aha moment, and that lasts for about 30 days, and then they slide back. Just like when they go to a Tony Robbins event, just like when they go to a breathwork workshop, it's all peak states that make you feel really good, but there's no change in behavior or environment. And so from there, they slide back into position, their conditioning, their constructs, back in their lane, back into their job, only to end up in the same outcome over time. These plants and fungi will show you the way. They won't walk it for you.
And cut. I think, no, I'm just kidding. That's great, man. I love that because I think at a time or two, Dylan and I have been guilty in going back into the realms one too many times, but
you're right in that space between someone doing it for the first time and then someone that's done it a lot going, why isn't the world just peace and love, man? And y'all are like, hey, you could do that. Let's create that path to get there.
Let's have you not flip off the guy that cut you off on the street or yell at the lady that just stepped on your toe at the grocery store.
Yeah, I was going to invite in, I think what's interesting about you guys identifying that vacuum, which, by the way, like, when did that download come? Realizing, like, hey, there's a lot of us kind of at this playing field, but understanding that gap, and especially with things being rescheduled, the work SMAP's doing, that kind of the wave that's coming. When did you have that aha? Was it collectively, or one of you brought it to the other and was like, hey, I think here's kind of an opportunity, or like, what was that formulation like for you?
Well, I mean, it was 10 grams of mushrooms 2 years ago is what it was. So the only times I really journey now is when I get a message and they come to me in dreams, which sounds, if you don't do this kind of work, sounds like the craziest thing. I'm like, mushrooms told me to, guys. It's fine. But for me, these master teachers, because of this relationship, I love this cat on screen. You guys need to watch the video if you can't see it because it's magical. The thing is, I had 2 nights in a row that in my dream, this message came in. And it was like, there's something that your body needs and there's something that we need to show you. And I was like, oh no. And I got an exact image of where to set up in my house, how to set up the altar, what time of day. Like, it was so specific. I'd never had anything like that before. And it was my only day off. And so I told Ty, I was like, so mushrooms said I need to do 10 ground up in water on Monday. He's all, what? I'm all, yep, that's what they said, pal. And needless to say, there were things I needed to purge and let go of. There were certain people in my life I still needed approval from. There were certain people that I still was trying to do it right, because I do care so much about underserved communities and indigenous communities, but I was still doing it from an energy and a place of that, kind of savior complex. I want to help kind of a thing, and it's not going to be authentic that way in connection. And so throughout the biggest part of the journey was, at one point, there is someone named Baba Kalindi Iyi. If you don't know him, please Google him. Baba Kalindi is known, he passed in 2020 from this realm. He met me at 10 grams, is all I'm going to say. And he showed me a portal, and he said, are you coming in? And I said, no, just, in here looking around. I've never been over here before. And he opened this bag, almost like a Santa Claus bag. He's like, are you sure? And he's like, he looked like a wizard, right? Incredible person. In his community, so his highest dose was 50 grams, which is the most he could chew. And in his community, they do martial arts.
Yeah, before they hit, or that's that's yeah.
It's it's a process, and so it's people will hear these things, and it's incremental, and there's whole other skill sets that you need, I assure you. And so in this vision, in this experience, he opens this Santa Claus looking bag that all I could say is it's like a dimension or a portal or something. And so I go into it, and I was pretty much shown that I have 2 years to educate as many people as possible. And I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know what would happen at the end of 2 years. It's like a Mayan calendar situation, Mayan calendar situation, what's happening? I just came out and I said, well, Ta, we have to stop doing retreats and all this other stuff, and we need to focus on this. We didn't know what it was called. None of that. And he's like, okay. So we just started working, and then COVID had just shut everything down. So we just doubled down in, what do we know? What are we doing? What do we understand? What can we see on the horizon? Because in this experience, I was shown from a strategic perspective what many of the pharmaceutical companies will have to do to villainize mycologists, home growers, to make sure that, okay, well, we'll decriminalize, but if we legalize, we have to ensure that people can't grow their own, right? And so I was kind of shown from a strategy standpoint how the marketing would take place. And so the only way for us to truly decentralize care and increase accessibility would be to empower communities. So what would that require? Well, not psychedelic facilitation, psychedelic-informed coaching, because coaching isn't having anything to do with the substances, but we can teach the teachings. So many places people are doing these strategies with cannabis with the same amazing results as mushrooms. So these tools, though we learned them from our mentors down in Peru, from our mentors all over the world, from our lived experiences, they're about peak experiences. What are signs that things are working? And so a lot of times when you shift out of the healing and you start going into it to say, what do I need to know, do, be, or understand for what I am here to do, for who I am destined to be? And sometimes there's parts that need attention so that you can step into being that person. So those come in, and I'm with those when those happen. It's that everyone listening right now has a mission and a calling in their heart. And they're quietly quitting on it every single day. So I had to get really honest with myself in where I was letting stories become excuses, where I was letting I don't want to, or, entrepreneurship is not for the meek, my friends. Like, this is not, it brings up all your stuff, and you get to use all of your tools if you stay in it long enough. And I honor those that don't, because it is a whole other medicine to be in entrepreneurship. And so that level of radical honesty required accountability to myself, which is how we created the frameworks, which is how we started to go, well, why have we created a life that we have? Because from 2013 until 2018, I didn't make more than $16,000 a year trying to figure this stuff out, trying to heal my body. And so now it's always been, what skill do I need to help people understand clearer? The messages are all here, but they always have been. And every one of you listening has all of this information in your heart, and for whatever reason, you're not getting out and applying it. And so we're bringing structures and frameworks so people can get out of their way, and so they can see community of people doing it that aren't perfect, that don't have the credential of a doctor, or that they do, and they're using it to destigmatize, but they know how to use it and work with it, or instead of use it, right? I don't have to use my doctorate or my PhD. How do I work with it? How do I use it as a gift? And if you work somewhere where it's legalized, how can I work with that? Or somewhere where it's not legal, how can I work with that to educate in my community? Because with all the documentaries and everything coming down the pipeline and seeing the patents, it's not going to be called psilocybin. I know that. Because if people know psilocybin comes from mushrooms, then they would grow their own, which means they're going to have to change patents and formulas and protect their assets. We just have to look at how business works and understand business so that we can work with it for our communities. And so to bring the information of this Western mindset, getting more money into the pockets of facilitators so that it gets into the pockets of their community to get the healing that they need. I have no idea where that tangent started, but it's just going today.
It's like poetry in motion. We're just getting out of the way, dog. We're just letting it flow,
Yeah, listen, I'm glad you learned really quickly. I didn't learn that quickly to get out of the way. So, yeah, you got to let Kole flow. This is where it's coming from.
It's a long time for all of us to learn.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is interesting. What I've been getting intimate with lately is the process of growing mushrooms, and just learning for, let's say, learning's sake, right? Just curious, and really interesting. If any of the listeners out there or viewers, if you guys are on Spotify, remember we're pushing that. The algorithm likes it. We're a beta tester, so watch us on Spotify.
Get it.
The spores are totally legal to order.
That's right.
It's not until the moment that those spores inoculate something that they turn into mycelium, which then is regulated and criminalized. So you can order whatever magic Santa Claus realm-inducing bag that you want from wherever, as long as it's not California, Illinois, or Georgia, and it's totally legal. But I think you brought up a great point about how no pharmaceutical company is going to want to call it psilocybin, right? They're going to get that doesn't serve them. They're entities in themselves. Mm-hmm. They need to consume. And so they're going to
have to scare people out of trusting a mycologist or person in the community because you don't know what's in it. Did you know that some psilocybin can have 50 times the amount of psilocin? That's dangerous. They have to sell fear. And we know that just by looking at how things work now. So instead of being afraid of what's to come, let's create the plans for what's to come and educate people.
Yeah, man.
It's never illegal to hold anything that's not the illegal substance. So if a seed or a spore does not contain the substance that it actually generates, there's nothing illegal about it. So it's the actual chemical compound that's illegal. And so if there's no chemical compound of psilocybin inside of spores, the spores actually generate, and it has to germinate. It has to become, it has to go into the substrate and do all of the work that it does, take all of the materials and create the psilocybin. And so that's a part of the whole legal mumbo jumbo.
And the stuff that you've got to know. A lot of people are setting up 501c churches and saying it's legal. No, it's defensible. There's a big difference. And if you don't have a lawyer or a fund, or, and maybe you start building a membership with people in your community that's just a legal fund. Be smart. Use your brain. Look at the systems that are in play. And the more melanin you have, the higher risk you are according to our current prison complex. So you've got to know what you're doing. People are posting on Instagram because they're normalizing it in their community. That does not make it more legal. And I already see coming down the pipeline, people will be made examples of, because that's how this works. Correct. And so if we already have seen that this is how this works, who said enlightenment didn't come with suffering too? We're just enlightened that it's there.
Learning recently of when magic mushrooms were rediscovered down in Mexico. Is that where it was?
Yes.
This poor woman in a little village and brought it to the Western world and just got demolished. I mean, she died destitute, disdained
Sabina.
by her local community. If you know the story, I mean, feel free to paraphrase it and kind of express that. But
I mean, in essence, on her deathbed, she regretted ever showing to Westerners working with these particular mushrooms down in Mexico. So if you haven't looked up Mother Sabina, please do. There's no secret to how commercialization and westernization has been. And so instead of focusing so much on the shame of where it's been and holding our heads down, we've got some work to do. There's a new horizon here for us. What are we going to do differently? And that's why for us, we don't say better, we say different, because better is always relative to who. We can say it's better in one community, but it's not for another. Legalization may help one community get access, but it will deny another. Just like in cannabis, for licenses, for example, people that have worked with it as an ally forever, whose only criminal record came from carrying cannabis, cannot get a cannabis license. So, this is the thing. And so if we simply recognize, not accept, if we simply recognize that this is not fair, but the more that we understand the terms, the more that we have a plan, the more clarity we have, we create safety. Because there's a lot we can't control. So we have to focus on what we can and then trust there are other things we cannot. But so many people are getting focused in an activist mentality that for me is they're just getting activated. They are not getting into action. And so we have had historically lots of times of activism with very little outcome. And now with access to the internet and technology, anyone listening to this right now, you have all the privilege you need to find everything that you need. Will you be so steadfast in your mission and your calling that you'll get over yourself and your woundings and not wanting to do a cold call to someone because it's important? You're not crossing a ship in the middle of the ocean in the wintertime. Make a cold call. People are making things so challenging right now, and I understand why, and that's beautiful, and I honor your process. Know that I'm not saying that we don't all have our stuff. But be honest enough with yourself now that there's work to do.
You need to write a sales book.
I've been reading enough of them, I'll tell you that. Sheesh.
Dude, a funny thing when you said that, I'm sorry, Dylan, this is totally not comment-worthy comment, but it's never occurred to me that it was cold when people cross the open ocean, like in winter. I've always pictured those cross-Atlantic Pacific journeys as warm.
What?
I don't know, dude. I'm just being honest. I just never thought about
it.
Go 2 miles offshore.
Never been cold on a boat, bro. I grew up in Florida. Never thought about it.
Well, and this
Cold
is
out there in
where,
Florida.
right. Well, and this is where, just having more conversation. I mean, Colton, you were at our last training, and you saw that Ta and I don't shy from the hard conversations that are necessary for us to actually confront This is where you have to have done enough work on yourself to hold space for yourself. Because you know you were there. There's moments that if people hadn't done their work, we wouldn't have gotten through that conversation like we did, many of them.
Dude, even with the work, there were people making eye contact with me. I was like one of those memes. Certain conversations just like eating popcorn. I'm like, what? I'm like, you guys want to triple down on this one? Are you sure? I was like, no, bring it back. Hey, oh, hand the microphone back. We're digging. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, because the thing is, that's how everyone knows that their voice matters and that the work that they've done is important. We want to know, not because we need to agree, but because just like you said with the ship, I never thought about what about when it's cold? Because there's a lot none of us have considered because it's not our lived experience. When you start to hear what other people were up against, you're like, all right, I'm being dramatic here. Own how you feel, process how you feel. But the more that you not compare, but the more that you experience contrast and see the truth of what someone has encountered, you're more likely to go, if they've done that with their life and what they were up against, I have no excuse anymore because I've done enough healing to trust myself. So we can't bypass that. Trauma's real. Everyone's 0 to 10 is the same. Regardless of what their 0 to 10 was, the pain and suffering is the same, I assure you, and same in the outcome. But when you stand with someone and you hear their story and what they've had to overcome, and they start calling to find people to support, or they show up anyway, you're just more apt to do it too. Because you see it and you're like, all right, I'm confident that I'll figure this out because look at this amazing person who 10x has overcome what I've had to overcome. And so it's not to be hard or critical on yourself, actually. It's to go like, if they can, then I can. And so can other people. And then how can I serve others because of the privileges I do have? A lot of people are hiding from their privilege of all lived experiences. If we actually started to own our privilege, double down on what our privileges are, own it, truly own it, we would help way more people. And not because we're trying to rescue. We recognize opportunity. We recognize what we can do. Ta has a privilege from being a nurse to speak to doctors and other people in the medical field because of his privilege of school, which means he had to have other privileges in his life to go to school. And instead of having guilt and shame, which is what most people do, and they allow it to paralyze them, what if we go into a deep space of gratitude and say, what am I going to do with this gift?
Deep thinking right there.
I mean, hey, this is a lot to chew on. And, I think just to transition a bit, there are some questions that I wanted to just drill you guys with, if you're open to that. Mm-hmm. So why is integration not optional?
Great question, man. Integration is something that's always happening. Healing is something that is always happening. Integration is a form of healing, right? It's wholeness. Bringing something into wholeness is always happening. Now, you can be whole with the dysfunction, okay? You can be whole for, well, I like to just call it function. What's functional for one person may be dysfunctional for another person. So if a dysfunctional dynamic, if hatred is built into your family structure, right? Oh, hatred's not good. If hatred is built into your family structure, you integrate that into your children, you integrate that into your lifestyle, and it protects something. It protects a fear device, right? And so this is an integration. It's always going on. Most people are not aware of what they're integrating and how they're integrating things. And so that is the option. Integration is not an option. And we are looking to bring this into an awareness space and to make sure that people understand that their integration of psychedelic experiences is not optional. And so it needs to be included in everything that you're doing with psychedelics. Any psychedelic exploration you have, including the fun ones, integrating that. Man, I had this amazing time. This was the most amazing spiritual fun event. I was at Burning Man and all this stuff happened. And now what? You go back home a different person. You have to integrate that with your family. Mm-hmm. You have to integrate that with your job. You have to integrate that with your body. You have to integrate that with your life partners. You have to integrate all of this stuff has to be brought together. And it's going to be brought together whether you like it or not, and whether you do it from a space of awareness and with intention or not.
If you're going to, even working with or being with substances with friends for fun, we're not opposed to or have any problem with. It's interesting, though, how many times people will tell me that they went and journeyed with friends the weekend before, and then I find out from 3 of the friends they're not processing well, actually, that something came up. And I'll ask, did you reach out to your friends that were there? Well, no. Well, did you guys do a closing circle or check in with each other? Well, no. And so are we really being honest that we are building these deep friendships and relationships if we're not checking in on each other after? Is that true? Or do we feel that way because the hormones are released and it feels really nice from that connection that we had? And so this comes down to radical honesty with the self. Integration is going to happen. How do you want it to happen? If I, needed a cast on my arm because something was broken, the cast is not mandatory, but it could keep it in a supportive structure for it to heal in a proper position to ensure it's more functional later. And then I'm going to need physical therapy if I want to build the strength. I don't need to do any of that for my arm to heal. So people don't need to do anything after integration. But how you integrate is the difference of the outcome and the results.
It's like a required responsibility.
Well, I mean,
if you want it, yeah.
If you want it, and that's the thing we're looking to introduce into all wellness paradigms, not just psychedelics. And we're at a really ripe opportunity with the rollouts and psychedelics and big pharma and all of these things that are coming around and this awareness around psychedelics to bring integration, which is a big thing in psychedelics, right? I don't hear about people integrating cannabis and stuff like that. We're actually leaning into our cannabis people to get them to start using integration as a term. And when this term starts to become mainstay, people can ask after you go and have a situation in the hospital, you have surgery. Okay, look, you had surgery. You're a different person. Maybe they took out part of your intestines or something like that. You're all free from this, right? Maybe they took out a part of your body. And now how do you integrate this when you go home? Well, cool. You follow up in the clinic. You go see your doctor and, that's not integration. That's just a follow-up. Now let's get an integration coach assigned to you that specializes in post-operative circumstances.
And that looks at the whole picture of what you're dealing with.
All of it. And this is where, when we have integration like this, there's no question marks. We don't make repeat customers because people actually heal in a whole space that's functional for their lives. I've sent so many people home from the hospital after injuries and stuff like this and asthma attacks, and they come right back because they haven't integrated what's going on, and their family doesn't know how to navigate this new person, and so they're more prone to infection because their immune system is racked up. They have all of these different potentials for re-injury and all of this, and they don't know about it. To have an integration coach to just support a person in being able to see themselves and how they're integrating this and weaving this into their life, weaving this into the situations with a dietitian or a nutritionalist. All of these things are really, really important. And so this is not just about psychedelics, y'all. This is about all
life
wellness paradigms, all coaching paradigms, all teaching paradigms. When a kid goes to school and they learn something and they have a big opening in school, they go home and they're a different person to their parents. They're different. How do they integrate that? Do you teach the parents, how to help their kids integrate what they've learned? Okay, you learned about the clock. That's nice, Johnny. How do you integrate this into your life? If you have younger siblings and they don't understand how this stuff works, how do you teach your kids how to integrate? This stuff is not happening. And to have an integration coach is a lot more cost effective than having a therapist, right? It's a lot.
Especially when you teach someone how to self-reflect. That's really the key.
And this is the thing. When people are sovereign, we don't need all these systems because people are not broken. People understand how to move themselves into a healing environment, how to use the things that happen to them, use the traumatic circumstances to create a resilient structure for them to be in function. This is integration, and it's not optional, y'all.
That's almost like a freestyle in itself. Well,
all day, every day.
We wanna honor your time because we are definitely grateful you guys came on. So if I may, I have one more question, and then I would definitely love to receive an offer for our audience from you guys. Dylan, do you know the question I'm going to ask him?
I do, but you go ahead. You got it.
All right. What is a question that you wish more people asked you?
What is integration? Everyone uses the term, Most people can't answer it. And by starting the conversation of what is integration, because I feel so many people are coming into the field and using the word and they don't know what it means and they're regurgitating it and they're saying, oh, it's, you go put your feet down in the dirt and then you go out in the woods and you ground yourself.
It's when you have a closing circle and you say what happened and then you go home.
Yeah. So if more people asked, what is integration, we could have a conversation, some illumination, maybe some collaboration, and then some actualization.
With a little bit of pontification.
Little iteration, alliteration. Y'all want to see something mind-blowing-ation? I didn't touch this the whole time y'all saw that. And the question is, what is integration?
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty cool. I got goosebumps. Tapped in, dog. If people want to tap in with y'all, how do they do it? What can they do to connect with you? Where can they go from here? What are some ways they can get linked in?
Yeah, the easiest, honestly, is Instagram. For us, every other way gets super clunky and convoluted and crowded. So either team@condorapproach.com if you have a general inquiry, whatever. But if you want to either come with us to Costa Rica, it's New Year's this year, December 26th to, I almost said
2nd.
April. It might feel like April 2nd by the time we go.
January.
December 26th to January 2nd at Imaloa Institute. It's an incredible place. And then if you want to become a Condor coach or you want to hear more, then you can go to condorapproach.com. But make sure you get the coupon code that we're going to put in the show notes for the show, and you can just we'll put it as hippie, since this is the Professional Hippie podcast. And then that way, that'll save people $250. We'll know that they come from you, and they can jump in on learning these things. Again, if you have experience, awesome, but you don't have to. Integration is not optional in every facet of life, from car accidents to loss of a loved one to whatever. So we're here to show and share everything that we can, because psychedelics are here. The wave is starting to truly swell now, and every therapist in the country, if they could do it tomorrow, couldn't support the demand. People are going to need coaches.
That's right. And for those of you who are interested in working with us in that field, we are not doing very many experiences taking people into the expanded spaces.
New Year's will be the only time till 2024
that's right.
that we do one of these retreats.
Yeah. So if you are looking to be facilitated with us, and it's something that we're really, and this took me a long time to own, we're really awesome at what we do. Mm-hmm. And, if this is something that you're looking to lean into it. Lean into it now, because you're not going to have it for a while. The reason we're doing this is because we stepped away we're doing the Condor Approach is because we stepped away from this because we're really, really, really good at what we do. Mm-hmm. We're not good.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to piggyback on that is, if you're on the fence, just go check them out. I mean, what brought me to you guys was obviously a strong recommendation from people that I really admire in my circles, but just the litany of free resources you guys have put out is, I've never seen that before. So at the very least, go check out all of the free resources. But if you're just on the fence, just do it.
Yeah, we'll give you links also for the show notes for some of the free resources. If someone only used those, they would change their life. If they stayed committed to using those tools, working with those tools, because it's simply guiding them back to themselves. And you have everything that you need inside of you. You just need more questions to get there.
That's right. And, we can even include a link for the people who are interested in Costa Rica, who are seriously interested about Costa Rica, to book a call with us. Mm-hmm. Let's get on a call and let's get all of your objections out of the way.
Because it's coming fast, so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah, so we'll break it down in the show notes. Dylan, did we miss anything?
I don't think we did. Integration is not an option, folks.
It's not optional.
Integration is not an option.
Not an option.
That's what I learned today.
Sick. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Hang around for a second after this. And if you guys love this episode, share it with someone that you love. Leave us a review. That helps us help you. Until next time, guys. Love you.